How's it going, boys? Trickster is back, and we're back at it again with another video. And this one is going to be finally the Season 1 of Fire Mage PvE guide. On this video, I will be showing you guys the rotations for the build, also the talent trees, the attributes, and the gear that we'll be utilizing. This build right now is performing very well. Extremely high burst potential and amazing sustained AoE when it comes to big clumps. Thanks to the new Pillar of Fire, is very smooth, and you know, with the burns on the targets you do extra damage. But without making this any longer, let's go ahead and jump right into it. I will show you guys everything in the video. And the first thing that I want to talk about is going to be the talent trees for the Fire Staff and Blunderbuss. For the Fire Staff, we're going to get Pillar of Fire, Strike the Match, of course. This is where most of our damage is going to come from. We're going to get Fire Restoration. Even though with this build, we don't use that many heavy attacks, sometimes heavy attacks will be required because the enemy is a little further away, and that will help us get a little bit of cooldown back so we can use that Pillar of Fire sooner. And also the Fireball. We're going to get Clear Mind, of course, because we're always going to be above 50% mana. We're going to get Fireball with Scorch Earth because we want that extra smolder stack. So once again, for Strike the Match, we're going to be getting Singe and Clear Casting. Obviously Singe because, like I said, even though we're not using that many heavy attacks, whenever we do use heavy attacks, we want to apply those burnings on the enemy so we can hit them with a stronger Pillar of Fire. We're gonna get Spell Slinger, of course. We're gonna get Prophet of a Fire God. And I will not be picking Flare because, like I said, Flare is something that I will be you want to use like in clumps for, you know, for AoE damage. But since we're going to be utilizing the Flamethrower, we don't really need Flare. So we're gonna be picking Rune of Helios down here, and then we're gonna jump to Pyromania, 10% increased damage when burning enemies. The enemies will always be burning before we start hitting them with the Fire Staff, because we usually start the fight with the Blunderbuss Splitting Grenade, so the enemy is already burning. We're gonna put every single point in the Flamethrower. We're gonna get Kindle because we want the burns to last longer. That way we can Pillar of Fire more consistently without losing any stacks of burning. We're going to be picking Watcher Burn. That way, whenever we crit with the Flamethrower, Fireball, or Pillar, we add an extra stack of burning on the enemy. And last but not least, Trial by Fire right here. Trial by Fire got a rework. This add a pretty nice amounts of damage. It's on a 30-second cooldown, meaning that every single clump fight you're going to have a Trial by Fire, and is a 4-meter radius, which pretty much you will be fighting all your enemies in around a 4-meter radius. Nothing else here increases your damage or survivability that much. So this is the perfect build for Fire Staff Blunderbuss. You could utilize Meteor Shower instead of Fireball. I just don't like that Meteor Shower still locks you in place for 1 full second, and on top of that, it doesn't add up the smolder stack for you to be able to utilize the Pillar of Fire more consistently. It does add a stack of smolder if you pick all the way down here Judgment of Helios, but that will be putting 3 points extra right here. You wouldn't be get something else. So if you were to get Meteor Shower, only get the first one. Just know that you will be missing on a Scorch Earth. You'll also be stationary in place for 1 second, meaning that if you get hit by mobs or if the green nature circle appears on your feed, you're pretty much rooted in a pretty dangerous situation. And on top of that, if the tank decides to move the mobs, then Meteor Shower, it stays in one place and it doesn't move, so it could be potentially lost damage. Fireball, in the other hand, it's always there. It's very consistent, it's very reliable, and it will always add that Scorch Earth, a smolder stack, and if you crit with it, you will add even more stacks. So yeah, this is for the Fire Staff. Let's go ahead and jump into the Blunderbuss now. For the Blunderbuss, we're going to be picking, obviously, everything on Ace of Shrapnel Blast. We're going to also be picking a Claw Shot because you guys know how well these two abilities synergize with each other, making an explosive, consistent, and very high damage for single targets. We're going to pick up Ramp, Deep Load, and Unload. There it is. Before we were picking on a roll. Right now we're not going to be picking on a roll because that 3 to 9% fortification is not really that effective for light players anymore. So instead, I will be picking future endeavors that give me more stamina whenever I'm fighting with the blunderbuss. If I go in and I do like a basic attack, Shrapnel Blast, basic attack, grappling hook, basic attack, and you guys can see that even if I go with no stamina, you know, I will be getting out of that combo with a full stamina bar, because I will be getting like, you know, like 8 stamina, 8 stamina, 8 stamina. That is a lot of stamina very quickly. And you could potentially even play with a ring without Hardy. That is the thing that I've been doing lately. I haven't been using Hardy for PvE because I don't find it necessary. I think that 2 rolls is more than enough for anything. Plus, since you have Claw Shot gives you an insane stamina regeneration, so you should never have any problem with stamina regeneration as long as you're using the blunderbuss. With Claw Shot, in and out, and Future Endeavor, know that in and out, you don't even need to hit the enemy with it. As long as you use a grappling hook, you immediately get that 80 stamina. 80 stamina. Obviously, you get it in a 10-second period, but that is still mega powerful and super strong. You combine these 2 things together and you go from 0 stamina to 100 stamina in a blink of an eye. Then we're gonna jump over here, obviously, to future planning, because all of your abilities reduce the cooldown of your abilities. This is very good. And buyback, we sometimes encounter some big bosses that have big heads, so that we can hit them in the head and get a little bit more cooldown back. This actually happens mostly in bosses like brutes, and sometimes in clumps whenever you hit like a basic attack and your headshots, you know, you land headshots even without wanting them. And obviously we're gonna put every single point in the splitting grenades because this is so very good. And yeah, this is how the build for the blunderbuss for PvE will look like. For the attributes, I'm using 460 intelligence and 50 constitution. 50 constitution, it's more than enough constitution for any mutation. I've been doing M10 with 50 con, and it feels very nice. You will never get one-shotted because, well, if you have full war gear, you should never get one-shotter. And the reason I like 50 con is because that way your potions will heal you for a lot more. That way you can be a little bit more self-sustainable and not depend on your healer as much. For the gear, everything that you need is ward and refreshing. Ward, obviously, depending on the type of monster that you're fighting against, this is the most important, you know, defensive perk when it comes to PvE. And refreshing is going to be your bread and butter because we're going to be doing most of our damage with abilities like Fireball, Pillar of Fires, right, Shrapnel Blast, and Splitting Grenades. So refreshing is the best offensive perk that we have. Now, if you want to upgrade these pieces to legendary, you will be looking for something that could be useful in PvE, like Freedom. Freedom works very well in nature mutations or ice mutation because there's slows and roots. And also some of the bosses in this mutation, they have stuns, which Freedom helps you get out of those super quickly. You could also utilize Vigor or Invigorated to get rid of the burns, bleeds, disease, etc. that you might have on you inside of these mutations. But the best one that I will recommend after you have Freedom and after you have Refreshing and Ward, it will probably be Elemental Aversion. Elemental Aversion will work pretty much versus every single one of the mutations for every single one of the dungeons, but finding a piece of armor with Ward, Elemental Aversion, and Refreshing might be a little bit hard. So if you find a piece that has like Vigor, Freedom, Invigorated, Elemental Aversion, go ahead and slap it in there, right? If you want to build a set that is specific against, for example, the Empyrean Forge, then maybe you want to, you know, consider flame conditioning, because the reason is there's so much fire inside of that dungeon that even if it is like Ice Weak or Nature Weak, the boss's main damage is still going to be fire. So putting yourself fire, you know, fire conditioning, flame conditioning in your gear for specific mutations like you know, like the Forge, it will work. Now, I wouldn't recommend putting flame conditioning on like an Angry Earth set, because you will be like, well, Trick, what if it is like a flame mutation Genesis? Just like, yeah, but what about next week when it's ice mutation? Now you have a flame conditioning there that is doing absolutely nothing for you. So if you guys are going to make like a flame conditioning set, the only set that I recommended for you to do it as of now is just the Empyrean Forge. If when the next mutation comes out, we see that they have a lot of specific elements inside of that mutation, then we might need to be looking into making more flame conditioning sets. But for now, everything that you need for Fire Mage PvE is ward and refreshing. And obviously, since we're going to be using Fireball, but we're not going to be using the Fireball perk on the weapon, you might want to have a Fireball perk in one of your pieces of armor. So the entire set could be looking ward and refreshing, but one of those pieces of armor should be ward and Fireball. If you can get a legendary ward, Fireball, and refreshing, then that would be super awesome. For the gems, this is the way that I've been doing this for PvE now for quite a while, and it's working extremely well with me. So what I've been doing is I've been putting a glass gem on my shoes, my pants, and my gloves that increases the damage according to the mutation that I'm going against. For example, if I'm going against the Corrupted, I will put damage increase to Arcane, right? So in my shoes, in my pants, and in my gloves, I will put the glass gem with an opal. By the way, that way I never had to change it again. So I put an opal in there. It gives me elemental resistances. So basically, it will work regardless of what element is the weak. So let's say that I'm doing Tempest and it's an Ice Tempest. Well, those 3 opals in my set will help me if it is Ice, Fire, or Nature. And then on the last 2 pieces, like my chest and my helmet, those are the gems that I'm changing weekly depending on the type of element that is a mutation. But instead of changing every single one of my gems, all I'm doing is changing my gems on my helmet, on my chest, and then on my other 3 pieces I'm putting an opal glass gem that increases the damage of the, what I'm doing to that mutation. And then what I'm doing with my accessories, on my amulet, I'm using the element that counters that weak. So basically, I recommend you guys to have every single one of the elements, the protection of the element of the weak. So if you're doing like a fire weak, you want a flame protection amulet, ideally with a ruby in it, so you even have more flame protection. And then on the other 2 perks, you could either have health, divine, you could have a health or refreshing, you could have health and stamina recovery. It doesn't really matter as long as you have that health and you have the protection perk with the right gem in it, because with the protection perk and the gem, that is already 15% protection to whatever element you're fighting, plus the 2 gems that you're putting on your chest and your helmet, that adds like another 10-12%. So now we're talking about 25 to 27%. And then with the 3 opals on your pants, your shoes, and your gloves, it puts it around like 34. And then since you're going to be using a opal also on the ring and on the earring, you will get beyond that 35% protection for any element, and you will be in such a good spot. You're gonna be so good. You don't have to worry about defenses, getting one-shotted anytime. For the ring that I recommend, since we are fire mages and everything, most of the damage that we're doing is fire, I still recommend that you guys use a ring with fire damage and burning, right? Because most of our damage comes from the burning, and we want to have that burning on the enemy all the time, so the damage of the pillar of fire can be consistent and high all the time. So it's going to be fire damage and burning. And then for the 3rd perk, you have 2 choices. You can either go refreshing, so you can use abilities more often, or you could go leashing. Believe me, whenever you have 460 intelligence and you have honing stone and you have coating, and if you have bane on the weapon, you will be doing thousands and thousands of damage. And that 5%, it actually heals for a crazy amount, especially whenever you're fighting a clump. And even any cheap damage that you're getting from the dungeon, the mutation, you will automatically heal it. You will heal yourself without even being close to a healing circle from the healer. So as long as you're doing AoE damage with like the flamethrowers and things like that, your HP regen it's crazy good if you have leeching on the ring. But like I said, you could also have refreshing. And for the earring, it's just going to be, your regular earring with refreshing toes. You can use healthy toes if you want. You can use regenerating, you can use nimble, you can use refreshing. With the earring, you can really have a bunch of choices, and it comes down to what you want to do with your build. For the fire staff, I recommend that you go with refreshing pillar of fires of 100%. This is going to be most of your damage, right? Just spamming Pillar of Fires. And if you hit more than 2 targets, well, 2 targets or more, you get that 60% cooldown reduction, putting your Pillar of Fire almost like in no cooldown if you're using refreshing on your gear. Obviously, the Bane perk is a no-brainer. You need that 25% increase in damage. I know it says 24%, but it's like 24.6 or 0.7, so it's round up to 25%. And the last perk is going to be Vicious. You could have Keening there if you want, but we already have a critical chance from the Fire Stab, which it got increased by, to 10%. And we have another 10% from the talent tree. So we already had 20% increased crit chance. Now what we want to do is do as much damage as we want with those criticals. So that's why Vicious really shines when it comes to this Fire Staff. So yeah, Refreshing Pillar of Fire, Lost Bane, or any type of Bane, and then Vicious. The gem that I recommend for the Fire Staff, obviously if you're doing Genesis, then it will be a Opal gem, right? An ignited Opal. But if you're doing anything else that is not, Angry Earth, then you will put the gem that deals the most damage to those monsters. If you're fighting against Lost, then you will put an Augmented Arboreal in there. If you're fighting against a Corrupted, you will put a Sapphire. And if you're fighting against humans, since they don't have any element, weakness, then you will also put an Opal in there. For the blunderbuss, the perks that I recommend is, again, Bane. It has to be there, right? It's mandatory. But for the other 2 perks, it's going to be Enchanted or Keenly Empower. This will give you the most damage in any situation, since we're using the blunderbuss mainly for burst whenever it comes to clumps, and also for boss fight we utilize that Enchanted Keenly Empower very good, because as soon as the fight starts, we're gonna start it with a Splitting Grenade, basic attacks, and we're immediately gonna create with any of those things. So the basic attack, Shrapnel Blast, basic attack, Grappling Hook, basic attack that it comes after, all of those things are going to be empowered by 15% thanks to the Keenly Empower. If your team is doing a mutation where the enemy constantly keep healing themselves, and you guys don't want to have like a Vile Bomb rune in there, or maybe the Vile Bomb rune is not always on cooldown, you could go ahead and replace that Keenly Empower or Enchanted with a Plague Splitting Grenade. That way, every single time you guys go into a clump, you guys have an anti-healing on demand. But I rather leave that to the Bio Bombers or even the healer with Putrefying Scream, since they have an insane anti-healing, and you can focus your blunderbuss just to do the most possible damage that it can. And in this case, like I said, it will be Keenly Empower, Enchanted, and the Bane perk. Now, for the rotation of this build is going to be very simple. You're always going to start with the blunderbuss, and the rotation will go as follows. This rotation, it is if there is like a big clump of monsters, then you will use a Splitting Grenade, basic attack, Shrapnel Blast, right? And then as soon as you use that Splitting Grenade, basic attack, Shrapnel Blast, you will swap to the Fire Staff and you will do a Fireball, Pillar of Fire, and then Flamethrower. And as you can see, the Pillar of Fire is almost off cooldown, and you will Pillar of Fire, Flamethrower, keep applying those burnings on the enemy, and then continue with Pillar of Fire. Obviously, the gear that I have on right now is my PvP gear. My PvP gear has 0 refreshing, but you guys know what I mean. So you will start with a Splitting Grenade, then Fireball, Pillar of Fire, and then you continue to do the Flamethrower, waiting for your Pillar of Fire to come off a cooldown, and then Pillar of Fire once it's off a cooldown. So that is going to be the rotation for the clump fights. Now, if it is a boss fight, it will be somewhat similar to this. I'm gonna wait for the Splitting Grenade to come off a cooldown. So for single target and boss fight is going to be somewhat similar, just that we're going to be utilizing the blunderbuss a little bit more, right? So we're going to be doing Splitting Grenade, basic attack, Shrapnel Blast, basic attack, Grappling Hook, basic attack, right? The reason we're doing that is because Unload and Deblow, these two synergize very well together. So we're going to be doing a Splitting Grenade first, which is going to empower our next basic attack. So it's going to be Splitting Grenades, basic attack, then it's going to be Shrapnel Blast, and once we do the Shrapnel Blast, we're going to have 1 bullet left in the magazine, which means it's going to have its damage increased by 15%, and it's going to be 8 pellets. So it's going to be, again, Splitting Grenades, basic attack, Shrapnel Blast, basic attack with these two combines, And then you're going to use a claw shot. The claw shots, since it's an ability, it will empower your next basic attack. And since the claw shot gives you 1 bullet to your magazine, it will put 1 bullet into your magazine, making it the last bullet in your magazine, which is also empowered by 50% and on low. So the rotation is splitting grenade, basic attack, shrapnel blast, basic attack, grappling hook, basic attack. That is going to be the rotation. Now, sometimes you might not have a splitting grenade. So if you don't have the splitting grenade, how the combo will go is basic attack, shrapnel blast, basic attack, grappling hook, basic attack. All right, that puts 3 basic attacks, 2 ability, super fast sequence. That is a very, very nice burst. That is in case you don't have the splitting grenades of a cooldown. So again, for clump fights, it will be splitting grenades, basic attack, shrapnel blast, fireball, pillar of fire, and then spam the flamethrower on every single one of the enemies, applying the burns. Once your pillar of fire is off a cooldown, you go ahead and use your pillar of fire. Now, for the boss fight, it will be splitting grenade, basic attack, shrapnel blast, basic attack, grappling hook, basic attack. You're gonna use your rune, basic attack, basic attack. You're gonna switch your fire staff, fireball, pillar of fire. Apply the 5 burning stacks on the enemy, right? Once you have the 5 burning stacks on the enemy, you're gonna do 1 more pillar of fire, and then you do the rotation that I showed you guys earlier with the blunderbuss whenever you don't have your splitting grenades. Since we have this ability right here, ramp, that means that we want to be reloading with the blunderbuss if we're fighting against a boss. So if we're fighting against a boss, you don't want to get out of the blunderbuss too often to just use like a little bit of flamethrower or something like that. The one time you will swap out of the blunderbuss is whenever you have, like, you know, all of your abilities on cooldown, like fireball, pillar of fire, and the burnings on the enemy has run out. Since you have over 250 intelligence, you have you know, kindle on the fire staff, and you have burning on the ring. The flamethrower's burn will last about 10 seconds, which gives you enough time for you to do a very nice rotation with the blunderbuss, and having those burns on the enemy last a very long time, like such, right? So here we reload 2 times already. The burning's still on the enemy, right? So now that the burnings are about to run out, you do the rotation with the fire staff again. You apply the burning 1 more time, and then you go back on to the blunderbuss and keep doing your rotations with the blunderbuss. And this is gonna be super good, chat, boys, for PvP. I mean, for PvE, both in, you know, in big clumps and in small scale, like a boss fight. And that was it. I hope that you guys enjoyed this guide as much as I did making it. Obviously, I will be making more guides in the future whenever the meta changes. This is the guide for the blunderbuss and fire staff for PvE. You could also utilize the ice gauntlet instead of the blunderbuss, and it will pretty much cover the same role of the blunderbuss. You know, before the fight start, you will do your instead of splitting grenades, you will put like a blizzard on the enemy, and then send like an ice spike, pull down the pylon, and then go with your fire staff and do your full rotation with the fire staff. And for boss fights, it will be pretty much the same thing as the blunderbuss, right? You will do the fireball, the pillar of fire, then you will burn the enemy. Once you have all of the stacks of burning on the enemy, you will put a blizzard, right? Then you follow that blizzard with an ice spike, so it reduces the damage of the blizzard, and then you put an ice pylon on top of the blizzard, reducing the cooldown of the ice spike and the blizzard, and rinse and repeat. That's how you will play this build with the ice gauntlet instead of the blunderbuss. But right now, as it said, honestly, after doing testings and after seeing how these weapons are performing, I can confidently say that fire staff blunderbuss is the king for the magical weapons when it comes to PvE. If you guys enjoyed this video, don't forget to hit it with a like, you know, just sub to the channel if you guys haven't. And if you guys have any question, you obviously can leave it in the comment below. Or don't forget that I stream every single day on Twitch, which I'm already late, so I'm gonna go start my stream. And I'll see you guys on the next video. Cheers and have a good one.